class, this is Megan. I just wanted to touch up on some things that maybe we didn't touch up on in class. So I wanted to make this video. I'll play to show kind of like about what I'm trying to show for you guys. So if you'll see, runs into that, and the object disappears, runs into what I call an enemy, and the player disappears. So I'm going to go over how exactly I've done this. So first what I did is I went to first I made my objects. So I made the pickup and the enemy. For the pickup, I just made it just a cube, just put a material on it so that way you could see that it was something to interact with. And then on my player, I made my pickup script for my pickup. And so what I did for that is I'm going to go to my pickup script, and at the top of my pickup script I have a game object for player that's used for the enemy portion, and then I have a game object for pickup, and we're going to focus on that right now. So we have a public game object for pickup. And then down here we have a in Unity function called onTriggerEnter. This is a very important function that we're going to use a lot in Unity. And you can use this function, as I say here, the onTriggerEnter function allows you to tell when another game object has collided with the one that the script is on. The other game object must have isTrigger checked in the collider section in order to read it though. So what that means is if I go back over to my Unity and I go to my pickup, you'll see in the box collider there's this little section that says isTrigger, and that's checkmarked on. If this is not checkmarked on, then it will not be read as something that the player is colliding with. And the player does not need the isTrigger selected because they're not the ones that something's going to happen to them. If you checkmark isTrigger for the player, then they will fall through the floor. And so we'll go back to our pickup script. And this is where we use the public game object pickup. So if you can see here, I have, let me fix that. I have a if statement for if the other game object is equal to pickup, then something happens. And what happens is that the pickup is set active to false. What this does is it deletes the pickup from the scene. So when I go back to Unity and I hit play, you can see my player runs into the pickup and the pickup disappears. And so you can do that for a bunch of different pickups. I'm going to show you a personal method that's better for if you want, say, multiple pickups. So, or multiple enemies in this case. And I've already done it with the enemy, so I'll show you that first. So I have, as you can see down here, in the onTriggerEnter collider other, I have if other game object dot compare tag enemy, then the player is set active to false. So the player is going to be deleted then. And what this compare tag part means is you're going to go into Unity and you're going to go to your enemy. As you can see, I've already tagged it up here as enemy. If you want to add a new tag, I'm going to add a tag right now for pickup, and I'll show you how to do it for that. Because it's, once you add a tag, it doesn't immediately save it to the object that you have as. So I'll just go put that on pickup right now. And that's how I did it for enemy as well. As you can see, the enemy also has isTrigger put on. But say we want to do this for the pickup. So that way it's not just the game object pickup. So we would do the same thing, and we would do other.gameObject.compare tag. And then for that, you want to make sure that whatever you named your tag is the exact same thing that you type in, or else it's not going to work. So I spelt pickup with a capital P and a capital U. And then instead of setting pickup set active to false, we're going to do other.gameObject.setActiveFalse. And what this does is if the game object that the player runs into has a tag of pickup, then that game object that the player ran into will now be deleted from the scene. And so we're going to save this, and we're going to go into Unity. As you can see, I only have one pickup right now, so it's kind of hard to test that. So what we're going to do to make this easier is we're going to make the pickup into a prefab. So what you do to make the pickup into a prefab is really simple. You just grab this pickup from the hierarchy and you drag it into your project folder. And then you've got yourself a prefab. And now I can use this prefab to just drag in more pickups. And as you'll see, all these pickups have the same tag pickup already as the other pickup. They already have isTrigger put on, because whatever settings you had this pickup as when you dragged the prefab in, that's what all of these new ones have. That's what all the prefabs are going to have. I'm going to drag these into my interactables just so it looks a little neater, so I can just do that. It's good to keep like objects together. And then we're going to hit play. And now if I run into any of the pickups, you'll see they disappear. And the same thing with the enemy. Like I said before, I made it so the player would disappear if you run into the enemy. So the player runs into the enemy, the player disappears. I know you're probably wondering, why does the player look like that? The enemy look like that? Why is it rotating like that? I'm going to show you that as well. So on my enemy, I have added a new script. I just call it the enemy. And so I'm going to open that script for you. And it's actually really simple what I did for this. So all you do is you're going to create a public vector 3. I named it rotate enemy change because what I want it to do is rotate the enemy. And then in the update portion, because I want the enemy to continuously rotate, I don't want there to be like a specific condition that makes it rotate or anything like that. So I put it in the update function so that this happens continuously. And then I used the transform.rotate and then used that vector 3 rotate change enemy in the parentheses. So that's the amount that the enemy is going to rotate by. And so we're going to go back to our script. If you see on my enemy, I have a vector 3. So it's got an X, Y, and Z. I set them all equal to 2, and that's why it rotates the way it does. But say if I wanted to set just this to 2, it will only rotate in the X direction. And what we're going to do to make this a little bit more interesting is we're going to take our enemy, we're going to turn that into a prefab, and then we're going to just place some enemies to make this a little harder. And I'll move them to my interactables after. But as you can see, they're only rotating in the X direction because that's all I put for my rotate enemy change. If I want to change this while I'm in play mode, I'll just change. And as you can see, I only changed this one because I'm selected on that. But you can just change it in the prefab and it will change it for all of the enemies. But so we've made our enemies rotate. And what you can do with that is you have your enemies rotating. You can click on each individual one, even though it is a prefab, and you can change it. So say you just want this one to go in the X and the Z direction. And if you want to change it back, you can go to overrides and then just apply all or revert all. So if you revert all, it will change it back to what it was. But if you want this change to be for all of the enemies, you can override and apply to all. And so every enemy, every prefab is going to have that change. But I want them all to have too. So I'm going to go back to that. And that's just an easy way to change it through all of the prefabs. And there are many other things you can do with that transform. You can also change the position with that. But we can get into that another time if you'd like to go over how to change position using that instead of like rotation. We could go over that in office hours, or you can message me. Another thing that I did want to highlight was how to change the camera. So on my main camera, I have added a camera control script. And so I'm going to turn this on now just so you can see what this does. So as you can see, I have this on now, and the camera follows my player. So now you have a camera that goes along with your player. And it's actually a pretty simple script. It's not too bad. So first you've got your public game object of the player, because you're going to have to end up dragging that into your main camera, into that new script component. You're going to drag the player from here, and you're going to just drag it into there. Anytime you have a game object that you're calling from a script, it's going to say like none here. None game object. So you have to drag it from the hierarchy into there. But that's how you do that with any of these. And then we'll go back to the script. So we just have a private vector 3 for offset. And then we use this offset equals transform position minus player transform position. So what this essentially does is it keeps the camera at like the same position that it is while the player moves. Because as you can see, the camera's not moving further away or closer. It's staying at that level. So it just stays right there. If I wanted to scooch this back a little, it just keeps the camera fixed at wherever you had it set, so that way your player can move around your scene and the camera follows it from that angle. And then we have a late update here. So this is a little bit different than update. And as I note here, it's specifically good for things like cameras and bullets. But so we're just using late update here instead of update. Because sometimes update can be a little bit wonky with cameras. And then we just have transform dot position, which is another way in which it's like transform dot rotate over here. that we have for our enemy script. But instead it's transform.position equals player.transform.position plus offset. And this is just going to keep that camera at that distance that it's already at while the player moves. And it just keeps them at that angle. And it makes it much easier to move around the scene than, say, if I just have that fixed camera, because then I can't fully see my scene. But this was just a quick tutorial on how to do a few things. If you have any questions, let me know. If there's anything I didn't discuss that is pertinent, you can also use the scripts like for pickups, like say if a pickup disappears, then you can do things like try adding like a variable to add a score, and that score increases each time a pickup's dropped. And that's just a little challenge for you if that's something that you want to do. You can also, alternatively, if you want it to be more of a combat game instead of a pickup game, you could have the enemy disappear when the player touches them, and then have that be the score. Honestly, the opportunities are just endless. There's so much that you can do with this. And I hope that this was helpful. Let me know if there is anything else that you would like to know regarding this. And I hope this was helpful for you.